All right. So, yeah, like I just mentioned, we are going to take a quick look at, let's see, where did that go? These tests that we're trying to bring back from the elm-html in elm module. Test parsing event. Here we go. Okay, so we want to make sure we have some test coverage of this in our events tests, basically for these three specific events. And if those all work fine in events, we're just going to delete these tests because these tests were depending on some weird like test only native code in elm-18. So in the previous hour we were trying to get this test to work, but I think we got to the point where hopefully it's just going to be faster to verify that we have the test coverage, and if not, backfill the tests elsewhere at a higher API level to just make these tests unnecessary. So let's do that. So we're looking for a click event. I'm pretty sure there's one in here. Yeah, okay. Click event. I am going to say that works. We have a button with on-click sample message. Okay, and that test totally passes. So this one is fine. Input. We have an input event. Returns message for input with transformation. This takes on input. There's a function. Oh, interesting. The value gets transformed before it gets sent to the message function. Yeah, okay. So I think that's covered. And change on check. Here's a check event. This is simulating event.check. Is check just a change object? Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So I think all that stuff is covered. I am going to delete these, and then test parsing event we can also delete. All right. Let's see how that does for our tests here. Okay, I wish this would give me a count of the compile errors. All right, what's next? Cannot find to JSON 277. Oh, okay. So to JSON was one of these that we commented out, which, oh, I see. This was our unsafe coerce, and this is the function which is now known as to JSON. And let's see where that's used in our actual code. Whoops. Yeah, so that's used here. To JSON is not exposed from this module. And the other thing I was noticing on line 277, this is in this from HTML function, which is basically used in every single test in this file. Yeah, so I think our goal at this point should just be to go through this one by one and check that we have test coverage for this stuff elsewhere. So let's go ahead and do that. I am going to shrink the font down a little bit while we do this. So let me know if that's too small. Hopefully that's still readable. But I want to try to fly through this at a high level. So even if it is kind of small, hopefully it'll be fine for our purposes at the moment. All right, so we're mainly going to be looking in query tests, I'm pretty sure, and selector tests, and event tests. Okay, so parsing a node with a div in it, we are definitely doing that. Let's jump down real quick to our sample HTML in these query tests. So it's basically got a section, it's got a div, it's got a header, it's got attributes. So that is fine. We are definitely doing tests with text. That is going to be fine. Parsing attributes, we're definitely doing tests with that. Parsing children, we're definitely doing tests with that as well. HTML map. HTML tests. I guess HTML map only applies to events because you're mapping the event type. So let's check here. Returns message for click on mapped HTML, sample mapped HTML, HTML map. Okay, so there's a bunch of stuff about map in here. So I think that's going to be fine. Adds 2 taggers to a double mapped button with changing types. Okay, so is there a test for that? Deep mapped. This has on input identity. This is going to return the message type here will be a string. Then we're mapping that with this function. Then we're mapping it with a function which takes a string and returns a message. Okay, and that looks like it's basically the same thing here. Okay, I'm going to say that that's covered as well. So that is all of these tests. Okay, how about elm-html-test, turning the AST into HTML. This, like we were saying earlier, is a module that I think we don't even want to expose. So I guess let's just do that now. We can just kill this whole module, I think. elm-html-test is only used here in this test. Okay, so if we kill this, we can kill this to.html, then we can remove it from our exposed list of stuff. We can also remove it from our to-do list as having been removed, and we can save this, and then we can actually just delete this file. Okay, great. I guess our next part is this. Oh, and this we can remove. Great. Okay, our elm-html to string. This to elm string, does anything use that besides this test? Looks like no, interestingly. I was kind of expecting that this function, or maybe it's other things in this module. I would have guessed that this module is maybe used for printing error messages. Let's see. But it doesn't seem to be used anywhere except in this test file. So I think we can go ahead and kill this too. So these were all about testing that function. We're going to get rid of that. We are going to remove this whole module, check this off, and then remove this whole file. All right, let's see what's next. I guess the next one is going to be, oh, and this can go away. And then we're down to just attribute parsing from attribute. Okay. So I think here we actually have a test that isn't going to be covered somewhere. So let's check. This, I believe, should be in our query tests. So attribute parsing, here it's checking a call span attribute. And that doesn't seem to be checking anything. Okay, let's add some tests here. All right, so to test this, I guess we're going to have an HTML div with an attribute in it. Our attribute is going to be callspan1. And seems like it's going to be kind of an unusual test, I guess, the way this is going to get written. From HTML, and then query.has attribute callspan1. All right, and I'm going to make a helper in here, div with attribute. And just extract this because we're going to be making a bunch of DOM nodes with attributes in here. And we'll call this div with attribute callspan1. Okay. And then I guess, while we're working on this, we should remove this this test that doesn't compile, which is elm-html-tests. I think we've pretty much determined there's going to be nothing left of it when we're done. We're just going to move all these tests over to query tests. All right, then we need to import callspan. And I forgot to start my test properly with the anonymous function. Okay, great. So that passed. Parsing a namespaced attribute. Oops. So we need this now. Parsing a namespaced attribute. So this I'm pretty sure we haven't tested before. Because this was using hlink-ref from SVG attributes. And this is coming from here. Okay, let's see if that test passes. Oh, and I did this. Did I do the same thing? No, I forgot a comma. Okay. Yeah, and I'm really not understanding why VS Code is only formatting these files sometimes. Okay. So it looks like we found a case that doesn't actually work. These namespaced attributes, which I think we've seen in the code before as well. I'm guessing that maybe this internal library works with these namespaced attributes, but then elsewhere in the code, in elm-html itself, it doesn't use them properly. Let's come back to that in a minute. Okay. And then this is parsing a property. So we'll use this to, I guess, check the same thing. Then we'll turn that into HTML. And query.has, should have this attribute. And okay, so disabled in this case needs to come from HTML attributes. And it's exposed as attr. And I guess while that's happening, seems like my CPU is getting used a bunch more than it should be. Okay, that all seems okay. Okay, great. So that passed. And parsing an event. We definitely have tests for that in the event tests. And the parsing styles. I think we have stuff about styles in here. Recognizes a style. Recognizes style by multiple CSS properties. Yeah, okay. Interesting. Okay. I'm realizing this is an API we should probably change to match the API in elm-html in Elm 19. So let's add that to our to-do list. And where should that go? Okay, I guess that should go here. So this is html-test.selector.style should take 2 strings instead of list string. Okay, cool. And that'll cover that. Okay, so I think these are all done then, with the one exception that we have this one commented out test. So let's get rid of that. That gets rid of this. Then there's nothing to expose, and this whole file is done. Okay. So what do we want to do about this namespace stuff? It seems like this is not actually handled yet. And I'm wondering if there's an issue already logged on elm-html-test. About namespace. Surprising behavior with the namespaced SVG attributes. Yeah, okay. So from what I've seen in the code, let's see if we can find this real quick. elm-html, so this would be in internal types. So when we have a node entry, or I guess an attribute entry is what we want to be looking for. Yeah, so namespace is not actually used for anything. And the facts contain attributes. Okay, an attribute namespace is in here. Where does attribute namespace come from? It seems like that should work. Okay, let's try debugging why this doesn't work. So we have our from HTML has invalid. Okay, so it's the selector that's invalid at this point. Okay, so if we go to selector dot attribute, and actually, are there selector tests? What do these do? Text selector. I'm not really sure what the difference between, or like what this test file is supposed to be about that's distinct from the query tests. Finds, okay, I'm not sure what that does. Okay, so in our selector, we call parse attribute. What do we get? Debug.log. And let's see. So let's run only this test. And the parsed value is a function. Oh, whoops. Because I forgot to properly put the syntax in there. Okay. So our parsed value is OK of namespaced attribute. And that, I see, is basically just not handled right now. So I think that's the problem here. And what are we returning in the end? Named attr. What is that? That's from another module? That's from selector internal. Okay. Don't expose, oh, I see. And we ultimately are gonna not expose that. Okay. So it seems like there's no code in the selectors to handle namespaced attributes. Although this is saying that the attribute doesn't show up in the output HTML. Okay. Test HTML selector dot attribute doesn't handle namespaced attributes and will return an invalid selector. Okay, so I feel comfortable at this point just not adding this stuff, or just making a note that namespaces are not handled yet, and that can be added back later. So here we remove those files. This we are discarding. This we are discarding. Query tests. Okay, these we're going to add, but we're going to add this part. We're going to discard that, and we're going to add this stuff and this. And we're going to leave out the namespace attributes. Okay, and this we want, this file we can delete. There we go. And let's see. I guess this can go on our to-do list of maybe add support for namespaced attributes, add support and tests. Okay. Got this stuff. Okay, looks good. This file, I still don't know where it keeps coming from. And that looks good. Okay. Cool. Okay. Add test coverage for things that were previously covered by tests in elm-html in Elm. All right. Oh, I think we may have forgotten to format these files. Yep. Okay, we'll run formats. And add this stuff. Okay, cool. And amend that. And we did that. So that can also be amended. Okay, I guess we can do this real quick. Make sure the things we do want to publish are exposed in Elm JSON. I guess we should actually probably do that after we do this part. So, okay, so the next thing is this kind of big task of going through these modules, and basically each of these we want to no longer be exposed. But the reason we had to expose these was to allow the tests to import some of this stuff. So going through these is basically going to be a similar task to what we've just been doing of like looking at one test that uses some stuff that we don't want exposed and either figuring out maybe that those tests are already covered by other code, in which case we can delete them, or we may have to backfill some tests or take tests at one level and convert them to be testing around a different API level. So either way, this is not going to be the most fun thing to do, but I think this is going to be the biggest one. I'm thinking, why don't we take a quick look at a couple of these and see if there's any easy ones to fix up. So let's try this out and just see if there's some easy stuff we can get rid of. So like selector internal, if we remove that and run our tests, this is in source attributes. So what even is this testing? So this is testing attributes. This is what we want to be able to get rid of, is this selector internal stuff. What is this even using? Okay, so this is basically taking an attribute, creating a selector from it, and asserting that it equals a particular attribute. I think we can basically take these and, let's see, do all these tests function in the same way? We're making an attribute. We are asserting that it is equal to another thing of the same type. I see. Anything else fails. Attribute.property unknown encode int1. Okay, so this is the only test that's kind of different from these others. Expect all, but it's not equal to that. Can find a class attribute in a case-insensitive manner. Okay. Yeah, so I feel like all of these tests could just be converted into actually kind of tests like the ones we were just writing earlier in, what was it? The query tests. Yeah, so here so essentially that's the same kind of stuff we're doing. Let's pull this over here. Okay. So maybe we can call this parsing an int attribute. We can have test parsing a string attribute. And this is just adder.title. And the same thing here. All right, so let's go to tests and let's remove attributes from this list and run these tests. And I think that should cover this first one. Great. Okay. Works for things like value, which are technically properties. Yeah, okay. Parsing a bool property. So that's going to be like this one. Parsing a string property, and we are using adder.value. Can generate a bool attribute selector. Okay, so that's basically like this, but we are using adder.checked. And we can also use adder.callspan and avoid importing that. Can generate a style selector. Okay, So we have stuff about styles. I'm going to change all these parsing words to be matching. Matching a style attribute. Okay, so here we're going to have margin 0. Query from HTML, query.has attribute that, and let's make this fail real quick just to make sure it fails. Okay, great. And if we put that back, what does it look like? So this should pass now, and that should cover this test. Okay, so assuming that passes, that gets us through the main attributes. Then there's stuff about classes. So I think this can be a describe again. Matching class attributes. All right, so I guess we're just going to do the same thing to start with. Except this is slightly different. Okay, so we're going to have div with attribute, class, hello, query.fromHTML, query.has, class, hello. Okay, so that test should pass. Yeah, my CPU load seems really high. Oh, okay. Well, there's a problem. There's tons of elm makes going on. Okay. I think that's something the VS Code plugin is doing. Let's see, can we turn this off real quick? Elm compiler, Elm make. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, I think the VS Code Elm plugin still has some bugs for Elm 19. All right. Okay, that looks better for my CPU. Hopefully that'll avoid some dropped frames. And let's format everything while we're paused here. Okay, so we can match a single class. npm-test. All right, so I think that should cover this test. Then catches a situation where the user passes classes using an HTML attribute. Ah, interesting. Okay. matches a class specified via HTML attribute. So this is going to be HTML.attribute class hello world. So I feel like we're missing a test here, where we should have a test where it matches a node with multiple classes. So where class is hello world, this should expect.all, query.has, and query.has class world. All right, and if that passes, then we can move on to this test about specifying class via attribute. I guess the reason I want to do that is I feel like the special thing here is that we want to make sure it's being handled as a class. Oh, interesting. So this didn't actually work. Huh, is it not supposed to work that way? Let's check. In here, class, you can have as many class and class list attributes as you want. They all get applied. So you can say that, huh. So I'm curious what actually happens when we put class in here. So if we import HTML attributes exposing class, and in this div we put class hello world and class other, what does this actually look like in the DOM? Okay, there's our div. Okay, and that's got hello world and other. Seems like kind of a weird behavior in Elm Virtual DOM itself. So I guess this is something that doesn't actually... Oh, I see. I had a typo. Hello world. Okay, so maybe that's the problem. Come on, typo. Please just be a typo. Yeah, I'm kind of unsure about what part of which library is responsible for like splitting classes on spaces. Okay, whew. Okay, looks like that worked. I just had a typo in there. Okay, so now we can move on to this test where it matches a class specified via HTML attribute. So here, instead of calling class, we're going to call attribute, and this stuff should still all be true. It should still match these two selectors. Okay, and apparently it's adder.attribute. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. Okay, did I typo this also? Matches a class specified via HTML attribute. The HTML is this. The query should have class hello. Okay, that seems like it doesn't work. I'm also wondering if this is supposed to work in the other direction. Test matches a class with selector specified, or matches a class using selector.attribute. So in this case, we would be expecting query.has, oh, I guess all, selector.attribute, which we've just exposed, adder.attribute class. Okay, does this test pass? So here we're making, oh, this is backwards. This should be adder.class with hello world. Yeah, okay, so this does pass. So I guess which of these two correspond to what this test is doing? I guess it's this case. So here it's saying in this test we're trying to rewrite, we're making an attribute from class hello world, okay, and we're making a selector from that. Okay, so I guess really what this one is testing is that if we made a selector, so this is our selector, if we made it with both of these, that would be equivalent to making a class query, okay, like this one, which would be query.has class hello and class world, both on it together. And that should pass, and doing this should be equivalent to doing this. Hey Pick, is O.19 where you can't do FFI anymore? No, that is not true. Basically, all the FFI stuff, let's see, I assume you're talking about the like interoperating with JavaScript stuff. Let's see, where's JavaScript? Yeah, so this is the elm-19 guide. So you still use the same stuff, these ports that you used in Elm O.18. So this stuff is all unchanged. So there might be a slight difference in the API. Actually, I think all the port stuff is exactly the same. Where there's a slight difference in the API is with the flags, which is only if you're sending data when you initialize your Elm app. So there is a slight difference in the API that you use to send flags, but all the port stuff is the same, which gives you the bidirectional communication with JavaScript. OCaml and PureScript. Nice. I always get PureScript and TypeScript confused, but PureScript's the one that is more like Haskell, right? And TypeScript is the one that's just JavaScript with type annotations. Let's see. Cool. Yeah, isn't there some front-end language now that's similar to OCaml that compiles to JavaScript? I haven't really played with OCaml myself. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, all this stuff passed. So I think this is really what we're trying to test over here or replace. So actually these can go away. We only really care about this one final query. Instead of using OCaml-C, I guess that's an OCaml compiler, you can target buckle script. Write safer and simpler code in OCaml and Reason. Oh, and Reason is the one that is like the front-end language? Or how does buckle script differ from Reason? Or is Reason the compiler? Oh, or does it just have nicer syntax? Reason's the mutated form of OCaml. Oh, I see. Just dumping JavaScript in the middle of your Reason code. Oh, whoops. Oh, wait, what? I click tutorial and it takes me to the Reason page. Huh, okay. Interesting. Cool. Well, I will look at that more another time. Let's see. Okay. So, interestingly, we discovered a test case here which doesn't work, but I guess that's a future bug that we can log and seems to not correspond to the code. So I think, sorry, my screen real estate's getting a bit cramped. But this one, I think, corresponds to this. Okay, I think that's good. Then next, can find a class attribute in a case insensitive manner. Okay, so that should map pretty directly. Matches a class. Using selector.attribute with different case. And this is going to be basically the same as this, except here we have capital class. Okay, and that should handle this test. Then defines class name property only by exact match. Okay, so what does this mean? If we have a property attribute of class name with string, then I see this is supposed to match exactly the string that's in the DOM and should not match a DOM node that has a substring of this. Okay, so let's see if we can write this test. We might actually have two tests to cover this. So first of all, I think we need to test matches a class using selector.attribute with a property attribute. Okay, so this test, we're going to make our div. We're going to have adder.class hello. We will convert that for use in our test, and then we will assert that it has this attribute selector using this class name property that we create like that. Okay, so that test, I believe, will pass. Except we need encode. We need to import json.encode as encode. And no, that fails. Okay. Oh, right. It fails because I put the wrong name in here. This is just hello in this test. And then the final check, then we are going to have, oh, nope, that still fails. Adder.property class name. Interesting. So this actually is interesting. This looks like it's suggesting to me that there was this test here that asserts that the selector is created in a certain way, but then this selector that's created isn't actually used elsewhere in the code in the way that this test is expecting it to. Because this should be matching here, but it looks like it's going to create an attribute that code elsewhere is going to have to specially interpret class name. So let's see if that string is used anywhere. dict.get class name. Oh, interesting. If we put a capital N here, does it work? Huh. Well, that's funny. So actually there was unit tests here that had a typo, which meant that this feature didn't actually work before, even though there were unit tests for it. Interesting. Okay. So if we have adder property class name, okay, So now, then the second test here is going to be matches a class blah 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 only by exact match. So here we're going to start out with the same thing, except we're going to put two classes on this DOM node. And now it should match this with hello world, but also, so we'll do expect.all. So it should match that, but it also should not match the selector where we do class name but only use one of the classes. Okay, this is getting a little bit convoluted. And I guess also it should not match world. Okay. Let's format this real quick. Okay, so we're making this div. It's got this class property, which is technically two separate classes, which we have tested up here. If we do this, it matches class hello, it matches class world. It also matches both. Okay. We're also missing a test here where we make our selector having both things. Matches a node with multiple classes with a selector with multiple classes. So if we make this div here, query.fromHTML, then this should match class hello world, and it should also match class world hello. Okay, I think that makes sense. So let's see if this passes. Okay, so here we've proved that making a div with multiple classes should match both of these selectors. Although maybe it didn't pass. Let's see. Multiple selectors with multiple classes. Okay, yeah, this doesn't actually seem to function that way. Has class hello world. Okay, I guess it doesn't work that way. Let's see, so classes should generate class adder.class to selector.attribute. Oh. Yeah, but there's nothing about selector.class in here. Okay. So I guess things don't work that way. So this doesn't actually happen. However, we should be able to match this in both directions. Yeah, okay. And then this failure here is for our test further down about matching attributes with exact match. That's this one. Okay, so we have our attribute.class, or we have our div with two classes on it, just like we were using up here. So we can match this using class hello or class hello, or excuse me, class hello or class world, or both in either order. And this test over here was saying that if we give class name as a property to an attribute selector, then it needs to match the exact string that's going to be on the DOM. So both of these together, and it should not match either of these independently. So I think that's correct, but it's failing. I guess I interpreted this wrong. So it's saying that it should not have class hello, but it does. If we take that one out, do others of these pass? No, okay. And it also fails for world. Whoops. So if neither of those things, like, it's basically still matching both of those, and it's matching this. Huh. I guess this is, so the way this is probably implemented internally is that it's going to loop through all of the things in the classes selector and make sure that this substring, maybe padded by spaces, exists in the list of classes. Okay, so I guess if we do a has not, it should not have world hello. I feel like this internal API was way overspecified. So it's like, seems to be trying to describe edge cases that don't really matter and that contradict the way edge cases are handled in other parts of the code. Okay, so that at least seems to pass. I don't understand, or I guess I do understand, but this message here seems to not quite be correct. Like, it finds it by exact match, but only is sort of true, but not if you put it in the context of the rest of the module. Okay, in any case, I think this test covers the behavior that this covers. Oh, okay. And it wants me to reload the file from disk. That's, I don't know what this is showing me. Just save it anyway. Attributes. Yeah, okay. So I think we're done with it. Like, we handled all of these. The only other case is creating a selector that's invalid, which basically doesn't match anything. I don't think we really need a test for that. So I think this one's done. So let's remove this, and we can save this. We can format everything now and go to our to-do list. And that is the first of these internal modules that we don't want to expose anymore. And let's see. Okay. So we added a whole bunch of tests. Matches classes. Okay, so this wasn't actually used anywhere. Or sorry, this, what was this? Yeah, when we do things this way, it doesn't actually split things up. So that's possibly future behavior that could be implemented, but since it's not existing behavior, I'm not going to worry about it for now. Okay, so we did all that. We're removing this test. We're removing the references to that test. We are marking it off here. And we're removing it from the list here. Selector.internal. Okay. Hey Viable, welcome to the chat. How's your night going? I think we're just wrapping up here. Let's see. So that all is good. And what is the summary of what we did? We removed test HTML selector.internal from the exposed modules. All right. So there we go. Whoops. Yeah, okay. There we go. Cool. Elm, so Elm is a functional programming language for doing web front-end development, or excuse me, a delightful language for building reliable web apps. It basically compiles to JavaScript, but it's kind of a nice API that gives you like a language and a framework all in one thing. So today we've been working on basically upgrading one of the test libraries for the latest version of Elm that came out a couple months ago. And so we've been going for like 2.5 hours, so I'm gonna wrap up here. And let's see, we've still got a few things on the to-do list. I might be streaming next on Thursday, and if not then my normal time on Saturday morning. And basically we'll be wrapping up these last few, going through these other private modules, and I guess probably converting more tests like we just were to get all of the test coverage ported over, but to hide these modules from publication. So yeah, so thanks everybody for tuning in who was hanging around tonight. Let's see. I see one other coding streamer online, RW Grimm. I'm not super familiar with them, but let's go ahead and raid them, and hope the rest of you all have a good night. And if you want to watch some more, hang on in the chat for a few minutes, or for a few seconds. We'll be rating RW Grimm in just a moment. And yeah, follow me if you want to see more of this stuff. The project today was like kind of super in the dark weeds of an internal Elm package. But in the future, I tend to try to do more like tutorial stuff or more explorational projects like peer-to-peer distributed database systems, other stuff along those lines I'm like playing around with, and using or like writing Elm packages to help interoperate with that kind of stuff. So yeah, nice to meet the two, those of you who are new to chat today, and I hope to see you all around. So have a good night. Hang on for a few minutes if you want to join the raid to another channel. Have a good night.